Hey, good evening, Nigeria. How you guys doing? Welcome to a space with me on Saturday, right? We're talking, of course, the economy, the finance, and investing. That's what we do on our space every time we hook up with you wonderful people around the world. My name is Kalu Aja, and today we're just trying to talk around the issues of regulation, the issues of how regulation, when there's an overlap, how that regulation then affects you as a consumer. I want to make it, very, very, just have a conversation that most people might not have really talked about, or you see the effects, but you not really looked at the value chain and seen how is the regulatory coherence affecting how the prices I see in the markets are going up or down today. Want to link it for you: regulation, prices, your well-being. So we want to talk around that today, and we have a few topics. We have a main topic we want to get to, but if you allow me, let me just lay out, should we say, the case study of what we're talking about, the cost of regulatory uncertainty in Nigerian economy. Let me give you a good example. If you go to the Nigerian Port Authority, and most of the stuff we use in Nigeria is imported, you will see that there's a standards organization of Nigeria. They're there in the ports and they have a mandate to be there in the port. Their job is to make sure that goods entering Nigeria are coming according to laid down standards. But you also have a body called NAFDAC, Nigerian Food Drug Administration and Control. So both NAFDAC and SON have a mandate to ensure that we are safe, we're healthy, what we're buying and what we're importing is fit for purpose. But that overlap creates issues. So if I'm importing, say, let's just say I want to import tea for slimming. Of course, NAFDAC has to have a say on that. It's something I'm going to take into my body. And of course, Sun also has a take on that. So if I'm the importer, I'm paying to NAFDAC, I'm paying to Sun, I'm paying to the Federation, right? Two agencies. So I'm paying the cost twice. And that raises my price of imports. That means that you in country are going to pay more. What if Sun disagrees that I shouldn't bring that tea in, but NAFDAC says I can bring it in? Ooh, then now there's an issue because both of us, these are both, should we say, established regulatory agencies with a mandate to say yes or no. One is saying yes, one is saying no. Who do I follow? So who does that tell on? If I was a foreigner, I'll be like the Nigerian government doesn't know what they are doing. One guy is saying yes, one guy is saying no. Same economy, right? So it looks bad on us, right? And on for you in the individual that is essentially, paying, your costs go up because there's uncertainty. And of course, if I'm paying twice, I have to charge you, the consumer, twice. So you see, this is the effect of when you don't have regulatory, one-stop shop regulatory, or when your regulations seem to work in silos. Then you get this higher cost, you get uncertainty. If I then had the chance to go to, say, another country that would allow me to import goods into Africa without paying all this, I would go. And then once my goods are in that country, I would then like them to be exported to Nigeria. So Nigeria loses out the, should we say, maybe the FDI or the presence, the sales presence of that company. That's a direct, issue when we talk about regulatory agencies that are sort of clashing. And it's not that they are doing anything that is bad. They are both doing their jobs. But when they clash or when it's an overlap, it could be that they're not really fighting, but it's an overlap in who says yes and who says no. It creates tension, it creates costs, it creates uncertainty for investments and for you, the consumer. And that's what I want to really get to on today's space. I see my guest. Ilima, I'm adding you to speak. I hope you are receiving my message to speak, or you can request to speak, and then we can just get into it. One will have a very, very in-depth conversation with you. So once you are in space, then we can more or less start this off, Ilima. There we go. So I think that I've laid out really what I want to talk around, and I want my guests to be in here, and then we can sort of drag this out and look at the various issues around Nigeria. Remember, when the World Bank used to do, is it the World Bank used to do its ease of doing business? One of the things to look at is just how, literally as the name implies, how easy is it for you to go into an economy, set up a business, pay your taxes, and meet regulatory approvals? How easy is it for you? And so if you come to a country where you can go into the country and you are paying one fee, you are talking to one regulator, that country gets very, very high marks. So if I want to go to any country and I see, oh, Nigeria has got very, very high ease of doing business, my board is going to say, let's go to that country before we go to that country. So these things matter. Iloma, hi. Welcome to the space, Iloma. Hi, how you doing?
I'm very well, thank you, Kalu. How now?
I did very fine. Yeah. Long. You know how it is. We're looking for money. We're all trying to. Yeah.
We're looking for money.
Yeah.
We're looking for
lots of things are happening. Lots of things happen in Nigeria, globally. It's a very, very fast year. We're already in. Believe it or not, we're in the end of July, going into August. The bar months are coming. Unbelievable. This is already July.
The thing that they say that there's some years when nothing happens there's some times when nothing happens for years, and then there's some, times when decades happen in months. It already feels like, so much more has happened this year, and the, notion is that there'll be so much more that will still happen.
It's amazing that we have literally a war that's affecting oil prices. We have elections. We have Nigeria, both in Nigeria and outside of Nigeria. We have lots of sea changes happening in the UK. The Prime Minister is leaving. Lots is happening. So that the year just seems moving very, very quickly. The Chinese have this is a saying, but it's actually a curse. They say, "May you live in interesting times," which is just tells you, when you see interesting times, like you're saying, sometimes it's maybe a blessing. But glad to have you here. And I mean, we're talking about the cost of regulatory uncertainty in Nigeria's economy. And I had given the instance of the Sun and the NAFDAC, two established regulatory agencies, two guys doing their jobs, but at Nigerian ports. And because they are doing their job, there's an overlap. I want to bring in T. I have to go to two of them. Legal, they are doing their job. My costs go up. Who I have to give papers to approve goes up. So the ultimate consumer pays more. There's also uncertainty. If one says yes on Monday, I can't sell till one says yes again on, say, Wednesday, right? So this is what we're talking about. What are your opening thoughts really on this?
This is a very common problem in Nigeria. It's a very common problem. And it starts at the legislature. It starts with our understanding of the lawmaking process, with our understanding long before it gets to the executing processes. More than half the time, you find out that laws are made without consideration for the already existing laws or existing infrastructure or existing regulations. So a lot of time from the conceptualization stage of the need for a new law, we don't take into consideration what already exists. Are we better off going to amend what already exists, expand, reduce, rearrange? Excuse me. And so what then happens is that's where we then have agencies, with similar or overlapping functions. That's where this problem typically always begins. It then goes sometimes it then follows and goes into execution, right? Where you then have overzealous agencies who, one, do not understand the scope of their powers, or two, do not understand the boundaries of their powers, and therefore go beyond, what do they call it? Go beyond the limits prescribed by their establishment acts or their establishing laws. And then you have two people or two agencies competing to service one industry. Now, let me use your Sun and NAFDAC. Let me use your Sun and NAFDAC example.
Yeah.
If I understand correctly, and I don't have the Sun Establishment Act in front of me, but if I understand correctly, right? The NAFDAC Establishment Act says that anything that has to do with things that go into your body, so food, medication, and stuff like that, are to be tested, approved, and licensed by NAFDAC.
True.
Yeah?
True.
The SON Act, from previous knowledge, stipulates that this agency has powers to determine standards. Right? That's the Standards Organization of Nigeria.
That is correct.
They should determine the standards to which things should be fit to, the standards to which things should exist to be fit for consumption or use by the Nigerian people. It doesn't give them a licensing power.
So I just see an overlap. I mean, if I'm bringing in tea, and tea is food, right? So NAFDAC is saying, yes, it's food. We have regulatory oversight over that. But standards is saying, I have to standardize the food coming to the country.
If in a normal place, right, NAFDAC should be your one-stop shop. Whatever standards you have to tell me to meet, give it to NAFDAC, so that at the point of licensing, NAFDAC is able to determine if I meet those standards. Setting me up to have to go to NAFDAC to finish my licensing, then come back to you to determine whether my products meet the standards. It just creates problems for me. Because if NAFDAC gives me license, you've met our requirements. Whether you meet SON's requirements or not is a completely different kettle of fish.
What if someone comes after me and says, hey, you haven't met our requirements, you can't get stuff out of the ports, and
why was I licensed in the first place?
And I hear your point. So when I was doing the research for this, I saw a word called regulatory impact assessment. I've heard of environmental impact assessment. What is a regulatory? First time I saw it, what's the regulatory impact assessment?
A regulatory impact assessment should be this regulation that we are introducing. What is its impact on our regulatory space? Right? So if we're introducing something, we are amending something, we are altering something, we are expanding something. What is the impact on all the stakeholders involved? So these stakeholders include regulatory agencies. These stakeholders include users and consumers. It includes producers. It includes importers, middlemen, whatever have you. Now, a regulatory impact assessment should be an assessment conducted to say, at each stage, at each level, how does this new regulation impact what already exists, or what we're about to introduce, or what we're about to establish? If we go to your NAFDAC SON analogy, a regulatory impact assessment for an amendment to the NAFDAC Act to be saying, what is the impact on manufacturers? What is the impact on the SON NAFDAC relationship? How does this impact the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria? Will it lead to an increase in regulatory and licensing fees? Does it extend the regulatory and licensing process, or does it shorten it? Does it? How does it impact?
That is where those questions are asked, sort of, and then they are sort of fine-tuned before it becomes policy. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, that is where it should be.
Okay, all right.
Long before, and a regulatory impact. You know how we have when laws are being established, when laws are being enacted. You know how we have public hearing, right? And the legislature invites members of the public to participate in the process. That is a key stage of an RIA, in that is where the various stakeholders are supposed to come and shout, this is how this is going to affect me. Right? Because from a lawmaker point of view, they may not necessarily always know everything. So when you have a public hearing, that's where all the stakeholders are supposed to come and shout, hey, I did here, or this is how it affects me, this is how it impacts me. I'm a key part of the value chain.
That makes sense.
This is where, but it goes, this is one of the problems that we have in terms of, I'm looking for the way to frame this. The legislature is the youngest part of Nigerian government. historically, if you take into our
the executive, judiciary, and all that,
the executive and the judiciary have almost always existed, right? Under military rule, which is what we've had for the longest stretch of time in our national history, legislative and executive functions typically went together, right? The legislature is the newest, youngest part of our government. So we don't always completely understand the lawmaking process, which is why we don't appreciate things like public hearings as much as we should, because we don't completely understand it. For most of people's lives, the military just enacted the law. They didn't invite you to come and speak or contribute to that enactment process. However, in our current climate, we have the opportunity to do so, but you don't. How do you take advantage of an opportunity you don't know or understand as well as you should?
Gotcha. Good framework to talk about the regulatory impact assessment. We've used the Nigerian port and so on. It was a good example. Two guys doing their job. There's an overlap. It starts the effects and to then bleed out into the economy. Let me take you specifically to actually why we want to lead. Let's go to a specific example. Walk me through this issue with the FCCPC. The name is long. Let me argue with that. Yeah, and with the Dion, and then of course the Airtel credit system. The way you can fill in to give us the more the terms that are more appropriate. But the way I understand it is this: you use a cell phone in Nigeria, you buy credit, you use credit, right? If you run out of credit, you are able to buy out of airtime. I mean, you're able to get credit to use to make calls and receive data and all that. Now, the regulator, which is the FCCPC, let me get the name just to make sure that we're saying it correct. I'm just going to go online. So the Federal Competitive and Consumer Protection Commission, right, have classified that if I use that credit, that Airtel credit, that is a loan, right? Okay, because they are now saying that that's a loan, they don't want the regulators or the vendors to come in and register and all that. And then NCC, I understand, is saying, no, these guys are under our purview. They shouldn't go to register with a separate agency in the federal government. That's going to be double regulations. And we don't know what you will say after they even register. You might come out and say, okay, do this or don't lend this. So you have the same SON NAFDAC issue where you have two agencies that are set up. One is consumer, one is telco. They are both looking after the Nigerian population, but they're now at, should we say, loggerheads over their interpretation of a service that a third-party private vendor is offering to Nigerian population. Have I sort of cased that properly? And could you fill in the blanks if I've missed anything?
Okay. Let me. You set up the conversation nicely, but let me give you background. So the FCCPC, Federal Consumer Competition. That name always confuses me. The Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission.
Correct.
FCC is established to ensure, and I'm going to just put this in as simple English as possible, to ensure fair competition in our business and trade practices, to protect consumer rights, to enforce obligations of service providers or manufacturers, and it's basically the idea behind the establishment of the FCC is consumer protection, right? Long story short, consumer protection. How do we protect the best interests of the consumer, right? So if there are any practices that fall below industry standards, how do we identify in the first place what industry standards should be and such and such? That is the role of the FCC. Now, because the role is consumer protection, it doesn't necessarily have powers in terms of the establishment or licensing of the provision of of sectors of the whole of the economy. And I'll just narrow it down. The Nigerian communications industry is managed by law by NCC. If you check the NCC Establishment Act, it gives the NCC regulatory powers over that sector as a whole. So it's able to license companies to participate in that sector. It's able to charge licensing fees. It's able to stipulate guidelines for what companies can do in that sector, and so on and so forth. However, the FCCPC is then able to protect the rights of the consumer, to say, you are in this sector, these are the ways that we're going to protect. You have to do such and such, or you have to stop doing such and such if we consider that it is in the best interest of the public. So, although it sort of looks alike, it's not the same thing. They're completely different powers. One is preservatory of the rights of the consumer. Yeah. The other is establishment in the first place.
The whole shebang.
Of the whole shebang. If the NCC doesn't exist for the telecommunication sector, then it will be, there's nothing for the FCCPC to protect in terms of the right of the consumer.
So how does this decision arise where you then have two of them claiming authority over the same market? What because it's you've dumbed it down and it makes sense. NCC is the ecosystem. The FCC by their name is the consumer. So where's this situation arising that two of them are now saying? Are they not reading what we're reading?
Before I answer this question, let me give you background. Now, the FCCPC in 2015 established the Digital, Electronic, Online, and non-traditional consumer lending regulations. Again, a long name. Let's dump it down. We'll just refer to it as DEON regulations, DEON. Okay. DEON regulations. What was the reason for establishing the DEON regulations in the first place? It was, if you remember, we used to have these loan shark companies where people could access quick credit, 30K, 50K, 100K, and then establish they will pay back after a period of time at such an interest rate. Now, the loan shark companies started experiencing a high level of default because, in the estimation of quite a number of people, their interest rates were simply too high and just impractical. Now, to recover their monies, the loan sharks started resorting to unprofessional practices. They would text all members of your family, your friends, and all of that. True. They were threatening to arrest people. They were threatening to physically harm people. In fact, some of those loan shark companies went as far as taking out physical harm against people. They will show up with thugs. They beat people up. They broke into people's homes. They physically seized personal items belonging to customers. Now, the FCCPC looked at this area and said it was unregulated. There were no regulations governing this in the first place. And the truth is, as a financial institution, you should have been licensed one way or the other by the CBN or by one of those financial regulators. There's nothing here governing this area. Let us implement the DEON regulations to protect the rights and the interests of the customer. That's where the DEON regulations were established. For some reason that nobody still understands but the FCCPC, they now said that the DEON regulations should apply to companies that provide value-added services. Now, these companies are different from the telecommunications companies. These are companies that provide, they found a gap and they plug in those gaps. They operate under the aegis of the WASPAN, or what is called WASPAN. Again, another one of those long names.
Yeah.
Now, WASPAN is I'll just give the meaning and then we'll move on. The Wireless Application Services Providers Association of Nigeria. Long name, just stick to WASPAN. WASPAN now are those companies that plug in there. You have an airtime shortage, or you don't have airtime, you don't have data, you need it quickly, you don't have money to buy quickly for whatever reason. They pay the telecommunications companies for you. Again, I'm putting all these things in as simple English as possible so everybody understands. They basically buy credits or data for you that you can then receive from the telecommunications companies and use.
Yeah.
And then you pay back. This is an industry where they spend maybe 200 million naira on a daily basis. It's, I think, about a 400 billion naira industry on an annual basis.
I had trillions. That's another conversation.
That's a completely different conversation. It's about a 400 billion naira industry or sector of the economy. So basically, on a daily basis, they put in hundreds of millions of naira to plug a gap between airtime need and airtime delivery. The customer needs the airtime or data, doesn't have it. So they loan you small amounts of money, 1,000 naira, 1,500 naira, 2,000, so that you're either able to buy airtime or buy data. For some reason, these people exist. They are licensed by NCC, the Nigerian Communications
This is
Commission.
the third-party company is licensed in Nigeria already.
They exist in Nigeria, licensed in Nigeria, operate and have been operating for a while.
Gotcha.
For a reason nobody exists. The regulations that were intended to address loan sharks, there was then looked at and extended to address these companies.
Gotcha.
And the companies say, hold on, why? We already exist with the NCC. We're licensed by the NCC. We're regulated by the NCC. Okay, just to prevent regulatory overreach, we're going to go to a court to determine who is our appropriate regulatory agency. That is where this whole conversation started from. This whole conversation, that's where it started from. And then the underlying questions are the questions that we started talking about. Under the DION regulations, the FCCPC sought to license operators to participate in that sector.
Yes.
But the question is, the FCCPC Act doesn't give you any licensing powers. Why are you saying that you are licensing participators in the sector?
I see.
Those powers are given to the NCC.
So where is their legal mandate to determine if airtime credit falls under consumer finance? So they have no mandate to regulate airtime.
This is where the question is. This is where the question is. You have the mandate by law to protect the rights of the
consumer, yes.
If you of the consumer,
yep.
If you have any question, you should be asking about the licensing process. That should be directed at NCC, where the licensing powers lie.
Not to create your own legal framework to regulate.
This is the conclusion.
To define. So in essence, they are defining that airtime lending as consumer credit. They define it themselves. Then they don't want to regulate what they've defined. So if there is is there any mechanism, just a law in Nigerian law, to resolve things like this? Because again, go back to our son example. I'm bringing in Slimming Tea. So Son is saying that Slimming Tea is a product and they want to standardize it. NAFDAC is saying Slimming Tea is food. We want to regulate. it. Same with this now. if there's a problem like this, is there any way in Nigerian law where we can go and resolve the overlap before it becomes what's going on now and we have to jump on the space?
Section 6 of the Constitution says that the judicial arm of government is established to interpret the rights and the obligations of Nigerian citizens, either between citizens, between government agencies, or between citizens and government. That's the place to go. Now, dissatisfied with what the FCCP was doing, right? Waspan went to court in May 2026, April 2026, I think it was. A court gave an ex parte order saying restraining FCCPC from implementing the Dion regulations. This was, I think, Waspan went to court, I think, on the 15th of April. The order, I think, was given on the 22nd of April.
That's fast.
Yeah, well, because it was an ex parte order, it shouldn't take long. The Dion regulations were enacted in November 2025. Waspan went to court in, I think, April 15th. I think the order was given, yes, in April, effectively saying, you know what, don't implement the Dion regulations.
Stop what you're doing, yeah.
Stop what you're doing. Now, because there was because of this issue, I'll come to this. What I'm about to say, I'll come to it short. But Waspan went to court and interim ex parte order was given restraining FCCPC from implementing the Dion regulation. Now, FCCPC didn't respect the order given by the court until a bench warrant was issued.
No, hold up. Go back again. You are saying that we have to go to court to sort out overlap. Someone went to court and got an order.
Went to court
and got an order. And you said, so continue. You are saying FC, say it again.
When Waspan got the order in April, for more than 5 weeks, FCCPC continued implementing the Dion regulations for more than 5 weeks after the order was given.
Here we are. So we've gone to the meat.
Right?
We've gone to the meat.
This is the meat of the conversation now. FCCPC continued implementing the Dion regulations. How did they continue doing so? They purportedly licensed 5 companies to participate in this airtime and data lending sector. Go back to where we started from.
I saw that. Sometimes you read stories in the press, you read it, and because you don't have a 360 context, it just doesn't register. I saw that article that night, and it was the point of the article then was that South Africans were monopolizing the economy and wanted to bring in Nigerians. I know I read it somewhere and I filed it away into KIV. So now when you bring it into this conversation, it gives it some great context. There's some really good context now.
There's a lot of misinformation that flies in Nigeria because the companies that form the body called Waspan are Nigerian companies.
And they're the ones going to court.
And these are Nigerian companies that put in 200 million naira at a minimum on a daily basis.
Interesting.
This is Nigerian companies that created a 400 billion naira sector of the economy that they fund on a daily basis out of their own pockets. So, anyways, back to the narrative. Yeah, I'm just trying to set out what happened.
Good.
Waspan went to court, got the ex parte injunction restraining the application of the Dion regulation. FCCPC continued in defiance of the order of the court, continued implementing the Dion regulations. Waspan went back to court and said, dear court, these people are continuing. So in May, I think it was 22nd of May, the court issued a bench warrant for the arrest of the DG of the FCCPC. That was what made FCCPC come out to say, hold on. We have stopped the implementation of the Dion regulations in respect for the order of the court. But that should not be. And this is where there's a substantial ripple effect on the economy, where people look at you and say, if regulators don't respect orders of court, why should I bring my money? Why should I invest in your country? Why should I come and get myself locked down in needless litigation that I do not know if you're going to respect the outcome? Anyways, after WASPAN announced that they were going to respect the order of the court, they then licensed a further 4 companies under the Dion regulation. So, even though there is an order of court, even though they've announced publicly that they're respecting the order of court, they're still implementing it by licensing people. And it comes to the question, remember the thing I said at the beginning, their remit under the provisions of the enacting act is customer protection. WASPAN doesn't, FCCPC doesn't have the power under their establishing act to license companies to participate in any sector of the Nigerian economy.
This is crazy though, when you think about it, that so in essence, if we take it back, because I like to use this Sun one, I think people can get that. So in essence, what's going on is that Sun, let's not use Sun. Someone just woke up and said, I want to license a private sector companies to go participate in Nigeria's telco industry without going through NCC.
Without going through NCC.
Doesn't sound right.
Like saying that the Sun stood up and said, we are going to now be the ones to give
tea license. If you want to import tea, come through Sun.
Come to Sun, don't go to NAFDAC. If you want to produce plantain chips, come to Sun, don't go to NAFDAC.
Okay.
It doesn't make sense.
Doesn't make sense.
Let me give you an example. SEC. Imagine SEC. That's the Security Exchange Commission, Abi. Yeah. They're the ones who are in charge of Nigeria Stock Exchange.
Correct.
Imagine somebody coming out and saying, if you want to sell your stock, don't go to SEC. Come to us.
No, that's not going to fly.
It's like somebody saying, if you want to license a bank, don't go to CBN, come to us.
That's not. You're entering my territory. That's not going to fly. You know that's not going to.
You see what I mean? So to just bring it down, narrow it down. Now, there are a lot of people like me who think, hold on, Ministry of Telecommunication, NCC, what are you people doing when a Ministry of Trade and Investment a super high, how do I call it? A consumer protection agency is now purportedly licensing people to participate in the telecom sector.
Yeah, and the telco guys are talking, these are international companies. I mean, you've got Indians, South Africans, Nigerians, 3 of them are international, quoted. These are quoted companies. So this is what they're going to relay back. That listen, if you bring funds to Nigeria, you run the risk of some guy waking up tomorrow and saying you have competition. Because the way telco is, as we all know, it's very, very regulated anywhere in the world. And to get the license, spectrum licenses to operate is very difficult, very expensive. So essentially, if some guy can say he's the building regulator, then he's going to say, because I'm the building regulator, I'm going to allow you to build. If you're a builder and you want to build base stations, you have to come to me, and I'll give you a license to build base stations and to then sell telco services because you are building base stations.
Now, this thing, the Nigerian people should be very concerned because this is an industry where there are thousands of people are employed.
Okay.
And paid salaries. Yeah? Now, imagine if these companies that constitute WASPAN have gone to NCC, have been licensed, have complied with the licensing process.
Yeah.
and have paid a licensing fee, if they are forced to come to an agency that doesn't have powers, arbitrarily forced, come to an agency that doesn't have powers, to be subjected to a second round of licensing.
Correct.
What is that going to do to the consumer? It's going to force the price of your goods and your services upwards.
Plus the uncertainty, plus and all that. And right now, are Nigerians getting those services, i.e. the credit services right now? Is it on?
For a long time, for several months, the company said, you know what, until we have sorted this out, we're not going to be providing services.
Oh, wow.
And so I think they stopped along all the telecommunications companies. I think that they resumed for maybe 2 of the 4, but I don't think that they have come back, to the market fully.
Okay.
I don't think they have come back to the market fully.
All right, let's just reset the room, right? We're talking about the cost of regulatory uncertainty in Nigeria's economy. We're using 2 examples. We're talking really around what happens when 2 regulators are fighting, in quote. We're not trying to say who is right or wrong, but you can clearly see what's going on. If we have this happen, it kills investor confidence, it kills consumer access to credit, consumer access to goods and services, and of course, it draws Nigeria down on that totem pole of ease of doing business. Lots of you folks are here. If you want to speak, you have the right. Just request to speak. I'll add on the mic. You have a question for Liam as a lawyer guy. You have a question for myself. I mean, you can ask to speak. So we're having a conversation, but if you want to get involved, please hop in. If you're on YouTube, I see you guys on YouTube. Also hop in, ask a question. I can ask the lawyer as well. So we want to make sure that you guys are also participating, asking those questions, understanding the import of what we're doing.
Now, Kalu, before you open it to the public, let me throw you back a question, because I'm just a lawyer. Mm-hmm. Sometimes when you're crunching numbers and you're speaking on the effect of things and politics on the economy, I don't always understand. I see the numbers and I'm just thinking, what's going on here? So let me ask you a question.
Mm.
Yeah, and then maybe when questions come from the public, we can then attempt to take them, together.
Okay.
What do you think that this sort of thing will do to? I mean, this is a 400 billion naira industry. Straight away, 400 billion naira. So it's not a small sector of the economy as well.
It's not,
and it has ripple effects on all the other sectors of the economy.
Yeah.
Logistics, production service providers, goods sellers, from a tiny level, a macro, from a micro level. Micro level is the small and medium scale enterprises, are they?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So if this sort of earthquake or these sort of 2 elephants are fighting, right, in this area, how do you see it affecting the economy as a whole? How does it affect the prospect of receiving investment from abroad, for instance?
Well, there's a general saying, the market does not like uncertainty. When I asked you the question, are we still offering this service? You said they stopped, they want to come back. You see what's going on. Because there's uncertainty, every board will say, let's wait. Let's pause and see till things happen. That pause translates to investments flowing to your country, translates to jobs, because for every naira, every dollar that comes into Nigeria, there are suppliers, there are families, there are salaries being paid. If they are going to expand their business in Nigeria, they will not expand till this is certain. If they are going to buy more goods and services, they would wait and say, wait till we sort these things out. And that's the ripple effect, that because we're not consuming because of uncertainty, the ripple effect goes back. Even to guys you don't think are connected to teleco, an egg seller that sells eggs near the head office where these guys work would notice that, there are less people. Or I plan to sell more lunch to the guys, but they're not employing more people. Or the guys doing rent. So markets do not like uncertainty, especially as these guys, when they talk to, if I was in Nigeria and I want to go to Ghana, what would I do first? I'll go ask a Nigerian that is doing business in Ghana and say, how is Ghana? What do I need to watch out for? What should I do if I go to Ghana? So this guy is best prepared. Are going to be asked questions. Oh, I want to come to Nigeria. What should I watch out for? What should I prepare for? And what do you think the answer is going to be? So this is why the numbers, you look at Nigerian foreign direct investment numbers, they are not really flowing in. Everybody is giving Nigeria debt, but nobody wants to give Nigeria equity. Equity is a partnership. Nobody wants to partner, but they want to lend to us because we have to pay back the debt. But that's because of things, this uncertainty. We're not sure of tomorrow. That's the answer. We're not sure of tomorrow. So
I'll ask the follow-up question.
Yeah.
Does regulatory uncertainty impact? You just said people are willing to give Nigeria debt. People are not willing to take equity. I know that equity is typically an indication of I'm willing to take a risk with you.
It means I trust you. I trust you. Yeah.
I'm putting my skin in the game.
Correct. Yeah.
Does this approach, does this sort of regulatory uncertainty increase the cost of debt?
Clearly, when you look at the cost of doing business, is equity and debt. So there's something called weighted cost of capital, right? So it's how much you are lending, the interest you pay, plus the cost of that equity, right? There's a calculation they do. When there's uncertainty, the interest rate you pay goes up. So look at
why?
Because there's uncertainty. Look, a simple example. If Dangote walks into a bank today and says, I want 1 million naira loan, just 1 million naira loan, what will the bank charge him? If they can give him 1%, 2%, they'll give him because they want his business and they know he will pay back 1 million. Easy. They will give him, I want to pay 5%. No, yes, because he's a blue chip prime customer. If I walk into a bank, they're going to ask me for my birth certificate, my blood group, because they don't know me as well as Dangote, right? So my cost of borrowing goes up. Look at the world, right? When Switzerland borrows, they borrow at negative or 1 or 0%. When Japan borrows, they borrow at negative 1 or 0%, right? The US, they borrow at 2, 3, 4%, right? You go to, say, Tunisia, so they're borrowing less. Nigeria is borrowing about 8, 9%. We're talking dollar, 8, 9%. That's what we call the risk premium, measured against who? Maybe the US or Kenya. And Switzerland. You are measuring how much you pay to borrow from Eurobonds. That's the measure of how the foreigners look at you. It's not how when they talk to you and say, we like Nigeria. No, it's how much they charge you when you go to the Eurobond market. That's how you know if they really like you. So look at what Nigeria is paying. Benin, Togo pay less than Nigeria to borrow because they look at those economies as, there's more certainty. You don't have to be richer, but the markets don't like uncertainty. So once you have your ratings in the bond market are derived from certainty. We know Nigeria doesn't default. Look at the foreign element. Nigeria doesn't default. When we owe money, we pay. Ghana has defaulted, but Ghana is a bit more certain in outcomes, if you know what I mean, than us. So we pay an unnecessary premium that we should not pay, simply because there is the Nigerian code to be anyhowness. We just pay that. We shouldn't pay it because Nigeria has never defaulted. This is from 1960. We can argue, we can say, like the military guy said, most of these loans were owing. We didn't take them. We paid the principal back. You guys are charging us too much interest. We can do that, but we pay our debts. Other guys that don't. Ethiopia has defaulted, but they are the fastest growing economy in Africa, one of the top 3. They get a lot of loans going to that place because they are looked at as people that are more deliberate, more organized than us, which should not be so. We don't default, but we are being charged a bad premium, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, so
thank you for the crash course.
There's just someone asking here just a question, just to be clear that, and I'm just saying I want to play devil's advocate with you, right? The fact that they are selling this to the consumers does that not make the FCCPC give them oversight? He's making a point that the fact that the telcos are selling this to consumers, does that not then give these guys the regulatory oversight because they're looking at the consumers? I think that's what DJ is making the point. Just, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I don't doubt that. I don't doubt that it gives them a certain measure of oversight. They are able to say, oh, are these services or the fees you charge or your processes, are they in the best interest of the consumer? Are there things that you need to change about your processes? Are your fees too high? Are your fees too low? They can have those conversations.
I see.
The conversations that they cannot have because they are not empowered by their Establishment Act to have, and the NCC is empowered to have, is who are the people who are going to provide this service? How do we license them? What are the licensing fees payable? The FCCPC doesn't have the power to have those conversations. That's like saying that a person has been licensed by the as a doctor by the NMA. Do you see what I mean? And then FCCPC says, "Oh, come and complete another licensing process with us."
Because you deal with consumer patients.
Because you deal with consumer patients, come again, we will license you to practice as a doctor. That doesn't follow. It's like architects. I don't know what the architect. I'll use the one that I'm comfortable with. I'm a lawyer. It's like me having passed the bar exam, having been called to bar, supervised. I'm a lawyer of, as we say, our full title. In case Nigerians don't know, the full title of a lawyer is barrister and solicitor of the Supreme Court of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. We should not just be calling us only lawyers. It's called us our full title.
No vex. Yeah.
But it is like having met all the requirements, all the requirements stipulated by the body of benchers, legal practitioners, disciplinary counsel, and so on and so forth. I am registered with NBA. And you see, I should come back and come and meet FCCPC to license me to practice law because I have consumers or clients for my service. It does not follow. Now, if I do something shady in the court, I take money from a client and I don't represent the interest of that client, that's a completely different story. They can now say, oh, we need to protect the rights of the consumer. But to go and question whether who or to speak to who can practice law, the FCCPC has no such powers.
Understood. Let's talk briefly about Kenya. Again, research. Kenya has a different way they do this framework between the central banks and the Commission Authority. Is that a model that we can use? You want
to? To the best of my knowledge, as much as possible, what the Kenyan approach is that we will find all the regulatory agencies and we'll give you a single point of contact. Yeah? So instead of having, breakdown as we have described so far, we're going to find all the regulatory agencies for banking, for instance. And you have one single point of contact where you collect your license. If there are any regulatory issues, they'll call you back to that single point of contact. That is my understanding of the Kenyan experience. I don't know, you're the expert, so I think that you'll probably be in a better place to give that answer. But my understanding from the little I know about the Kenyan regulatory experience is that they try to narrow it down as much as possible, bring all the regulatory agencies under one umbrella for a particular sector, and then create a single point of contact between between regulator, company, and consumer. So that if that company has any licensing requirement, it goes to that single point of contact.
Yeah.
And if the consumer has any consumer complaints, it goes to that single point of contact. that way you prevent this issue of regulatory overreach. In terms of consumer protection, in Nigeria, I think we have the FCCPC, we have the Consumer Protection Council, and there's one other regulatory agency. Now, if you have all these three agencies, dancing about on and they apply to every sector of the Nigerian economy. If you have all these, surely you are going to create a scenario like the one that we have currently, where somebody oversteps the powers of that they are provided with by their establishment act.
But will that work here though? If we say, okay, listen, we're just going to have that clearinghouse, because when you do, again, in finance example, when I'm doing a public offer and all that, there are many things that I need. So what they typically do, they'll tell you there's going to be a data room, and that data room, everything is there. The regulatory side, the finances side, the environmental side is all there. You can go there, ask for this in one single place. Do we have that in Nigeria at a federal level? If I want to do a dam, or if I want to register a company or get a light, I can go there and NABAC will say, this is what we need from you, this guy will need from you. Do we have that in Nigeria?
I don't know that we do. From my small and I have rather considerable experience, securing licenses for companies to participate in sectors of in different sectors of the Nigerian economy. The Nigerian licensing process is one of the most difficult in the world.
Oh, wow.
You will go to quite a number. You don't have any single clearinghouse relating to any one sector of the economy. So you will go to multiple agencies, pay multiple fees, comply with multiple licensing processes, provide documents multiple times.
That is not good. That's the ease of doing business we're talking about.
This is the ease of doing business that we're talking about. For in the company incorporation process, and this is where I can give commendation to CAC as much as possible. With the CAC and the taxation system, you can actually go to CAC, and by the time you are done from there, you have everything you need in terms of your tax identification number. You have everything you need in terms of you have finished your company registration, and all of that. But if you are establishing a business say you're providing slimming tea. You go to CAC, you register your company, you get your tax identification number, even though I think they have a desk from the tax authorities at CAC, so that it just makes it easier for you rather than you having to leave CAC and then going to the tax authorities. Then if you finish from CAC, you then go to what they call that place now. You then go to NAFDAC. If you finish from NAFDAC, you then go to SON. If you finish from SON, you then go to the Manufacturing Association of Nigeria if you're a manufacturer. If you finish from there, and then you are running around. All this could be streamlined, and you could have a desk at CAC where if you're going to be producing medication, you can just comply with all of that before you leave that building or before you leave that agency. But for some reason, it's not so in Nigeria.
And should we come back to this regulatory impact assessment? It should be mandatory, right? I'm just thinking that if we had that and it was a mandatory thing, it would have been flagged that, listen, hey, you didn't go to the data room. If the FCCP didn't go to the data room to talk to NCC, that would help, right? If it was mandatory. Or is it going to be just more bureaucratic?
Of course it will be.
Okay.
It will be. It gives us, and it is not only just that the regulatory agencies should have access to data room. Even the stakeholders, the public, should be able to go there and say, hey, this is how it affects me.
Gotcha. But, even the consumers as well. We can go there and say,
we should be able to go to there and say, oh, you didn't think about this. This is how it potentially affects me. Okay. So that at that cooking stage, long before it is served. But what we have is completely different.
Okay, just a question. I'm getting. I'm just going to make sure I understand this one. This guy is asking. So I'm hearing you. Is it? Can I go to the what's the? He's calling the agency. Can I go to that what's the association and also register to sell data? I'm not sure if you know that answer. He's trying to figure out if that association is open to anyone. If I walk in, what do I need to? Is that your call?
I think. I to be honest, I don't know.
Okay.
This is purely conjecture. I think if you first go to NCC and you get a license from NCC, you then go to WASPAN and tell them that you want to, because WASPAN is an association.
Yeah.
It is the value-added services companies that came together to form a I use the word trade union very loosely.
Yeah.
But an association that protects their own interests.
Okay.
An umbrella body so that it helps protect themselves, because you know how they say it now, there's protection in numbers.
Yeah.
So I think that WASPAN, I think that you first have to get a license before you can then try to be a member of WASPAN.
Okay, what I've done, I'm just talking to the guy that asked the question. I'm sharing the name, the real name, the Wireless Application Service Providers Association of Nigeria, WASPAN. So if you look on my Twitter, if I just share the name. So if you go in there, you should be able to find them. Then you can maybe ask them that specific question. I think most of these questions are more for them. He's basically asking, how can I get in? How can I get a license? How can I do it? So yeah, just go straight to them. I think they would have a desk or a person that can talk to you in particular. We've been here for an hour and I'm still learning. Just a few, let me ask you a few other questions here. This gentleman is like, so there's a court case that the court is going to, the court is meeting on the 20th. What are we, will they simply say, is the court case just to say who is in charge? Or are they going to give a ruling to say, what's the court case about? To say only NCC can do this and FCC should just basically stay along their mandate? Is that what the court actually is driving at?
I think that primarily, let me just put it in as simple English as possible. Primarily, yes.
Okay.
The court case is to determine which agency, under the provisions of their Establishment Act, has the power or the authority to license companies to provide these value-added services. Okay. I think the judgment will be given on, what's today? Today's the 18th. On Monday, the 20th of July, I think the judgment will be given.
20th. Yeah. So it's good. The cases in court, they're going to give in 20th, and it will emphasize this. Yeah. There's only saying the Nigerian court worked to these two gentlemen. The Nigerian court worked. There's going to be a judgment. The initial hiccups, but the Nigerian court works. That's what Miriam is saying. Miriam's saying that the Nigerian courts work. So that's kudos to Nigerian courts.
Nigerian, now speaking as lawyers, we know how to give ourselves titles. I gave you my full title before, Kalu, and you have to be referring to me as that going forward. Barrister Solicitor of the Supreme Court of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Okay.
Another title we like to give ourselves is Minister of the Temple of Justice.
Wow. That's a bigger one. I would use that one if I was you.
But I'm speaking as a Minister of the Temple of Justice, yeah? I always advocate, go to court. The courts work. I have many complaints about the Nigerian judiciary. I think that our justice process can be very cumbersome. We use language that people often don't understand. Our processes can be very lengthy. The justice process can grind very slowly. From personal experience, I think my father was involved in a judgment in a court case that went from 1999 through till 2005 or 2006. Judgment was not respected until about 2007 or 2008. So he was in court looking for justice for about 12 years for something that was very easy and very straightforward. Yeah? Which is one of the reasons why I made up my mind to become a lawyer in the first place.
Yeah,
but the Nigerian judiciary works.
Okay.
It works. And I encourage people, as much as possible, go and engage with it. We might not always like the outcome, but I will always say to people, go and engage with it, with the judicial process.
And that brings to this question. If we start to round up, someone is just saying, I'm just interested in the speed of the court case. Is there a particular reason why this court case happened so fast? This is an interesting thing. You're just asking that, normally, because you're just saying that, a guy saying, I'm just concerned it's ACU. I'm just interested in how the court case happened so fast that we're going to get judgment on Monday.
I think that it is also because the matter is very straightforward. I think it's very, very straightforward. And I think the approach from the courts has been, why are we wasting time, determining something? Why should we waste time determining something that is so straightforward? I'm not going to attempt to predict the mind of the learned judge who is presiding over the case. But I think that, I can almost certainly say this is the direction that this law will go. And that is simply by looking at the Establishment Act of the two authorities, of the two agencies. Once you look at it, it's very straightforward. Yeah. I think that straightforward nature is the reason why judgment is coming so quickly.
And again,
that's the only reason why.
Just to round up again, this then, in law, you guys have this thing called precedence. So when we get this ruling now, this then talks about precedence, in which case everybody should stay in his lane, right? If your lane overlaps, go to the regulatory thing you're talking about, i.e. the data room, or even just talk. Again, just my own point of view. Why couldn't the NCC guy just pick up a phone and call the FCC guy? Did that happen? Why? You're in the same government, right? Why can't you just pick up the phone? Hey, what are you doing? Okay, let's meet over lunch. Hey, this is what we're going on. Oh, blah, blah, blah. Then there's okay. Why couldn't that have happened?
To my mind, this is where we often have failures of government. And I'm trying very hard not to be critical, because one of the condemnations I personally get, one of the criticisms I personally get, is that I often allow my political opinions or my political stances influence my judgment on every other thing. So if you notice, I've tried very hard not to be directly critical of anybody in government.
And it's not to be critical about. It's like I said, this is something that would happen organically. Two people are doing their job.
I'm saying that to say this,
Okay.
To my mind, this could have easily been resolved by the Minister for Trade and Investment or the Minister for Communication, who is the supervising minister for NCC, speaking to the Minister for Trade and Investment, and then calling the DG of NCC and the DG of the FCCPC, four of them sit down in a room, have a meeting, hash out something that works for everybody. That's how government is supposed to work. That's how government is supposed to work. But in this case, I don't think that the institutions that govern, I don't think that the Ministry for Telecommunications, the Ministry for Trade and Investment, I don't think that they've handled, and this is an intra-government issue. The parties, the primary authorities here, all members of one government. You should be able to have cohesion at that level in terms of what is policy and how do we implement this policy. That hasn't happened here. This is what happens when typically government agencies work at cross purposes with each other. And I'm trying very hard not to be overtly critical.
Understood. So for me, this was a learning space for me. I now understand better what's happened. We have the FCCPC essentially saying that consumer credits fall under the consumer protection overview, and based on that, they want to regulate it. I think the issue that you pointed out was then now licensing new entrants into this market. I think that's a bit of an overreach. If it's just to say we want to protect consumers, this is my native sense, just to say want to protect consumers, that sounds okay. But I think licensing new folks, that looks like you're stepping on someone's turf. We've talked about the regulatory, sandboxing and all that impact assessment. I think it's very, very important for Nigerians to do that. Not just in this case. I think many times we announce something and we pull it back. We say we're going to either increase fees or reduce fees, and then we take it back because somebody will point out that, hey, if you do this, this is what happens. The case in point, we're going to import food for free without the tariffs, and the custom guys were dragging their feet about targets. But if we have a sort of it's still one federation, one federal government, one Nigeria, it tends to even out. Money is fungible. You can lose money here, gain it here, but the Nigerian consumer should be preeminent issue for everyone. I've also learned that as well. I learned the suit's going to come out on Monday. I wasn't going to take a peek at it, but now I'll basically watch and see what happens on Monday, because I'm more interested in the precedents going forward. And I think it would allow the government to be a bit more institutional. I think folks will have to go back to their founding documents. I think in America, they also just had a case, I'm not sure if you're in America, where they said in the past in America, if the Congress did not write something down, if, for instance, you are Environmental Protection Agency, there was no ruling to say you cannot regulate a pond of water. The EPA will basically go and regulate it. Now they've passed a new law. I forgot the name of the guy that took them to court that basically says unless it is written in black and white, you cannot, as the agencies, regulate that thing. So it has been a sea change in America. So the EPA, most of these guys have lost a lot of power, because unless it is specifically written in black and white by Congress in your founding document, you cannot go and regulate it. The case was brought by a fisherman who was fishing, and the government basically came and said, hey, you want to measure your fish, you want to see if your fish is the right one. And they said, you guys are having authority to do this. And they said, yes, we do. We are, blah, blah, blah. They went to court, and Supreme Court sided with him. So I think that brings certainty a bit. Some people will lose power, but there's certainty, and with certainty brings investment, and with investment brings jobs and lower prices for you and I on this space, which is why we held this space, because it's very, very important thing to talk about. Iloma, any closing thoughts?
No, I think that we've spoken about this extensively, and this is well, my call will primarily be to people who hear us across spectrum. It doesn't have to even just do with this on this issue, on the importance of a regulatory impact assessment. If you ever hear about a public hearing at the legislature, whether national or state level, on the enactment of any legislation that you think that impacts you, go to that public hearing. Submit memoranda if you can, submit a memo if you can.
Get interested.
Get interested in the process, because ultimately that is how we ensure that we then get laws and regulations that impact general public favorably. I think that at some point Nigerian agencies must learn to stick to their lanes. Look at your originating document, right? And then stick within the powers that are provided by your originating document. And then the final thing, I must stress the need for interagency and intra-government collaboration. If, like I said, if 4 people, the Minister for Telecommunications, the Minister for Trade and Investment, the DG of the SCCPC, and the DG of the NCC had all sat down in a room, you wouldn't have had to waste public resources going to court to determine an issue that, to my mind, is very simple and very straightforward. But we've also learned that in Nigeria, things are not always as straightforward as they seem. So here we are.
Well said, well said. Yeah, thanks for you folks that basically tuned in to listen. You guys are the stars. It was a very, very short time for the space. I think you guys have patiently listened because you want to learn about what's going on. It sounds esoteric. Now, remember what I said. When I first heard the news about Nigerian telcos being added to sell credit, I'd never heard about that market before. It just looked like it. I looked at it with a different lens than I'm looking at it now. So most of this news you hear in Nigeria, you hear them, doesn't make sense. They later on something happened, like, oh, but it's important to know what's going on in the country. Now, lots of folks are there. The bulk of the posts I'm getting are like, how can I get into this business? Everyone's asking, how can I? That's the bulk. How can I get in? Kalu, how can I get in? Who is the guy? That's what people are interested in. Which is good. It's good. It's good. Like, you guys want to get in, it's good. But again, you can't thrive in a sector that is not regulated, that doesn't have laid down framework. So that's why this source of space is good. Bringing an expert to talk about the issues and the topics so we can get better at it. So I appreciate you guys for hanging out here. You guys are my my core audience, and I really love you guys here. We'll be back here tomorrow. Tomorrow is the World Cup finals, right? So we're going to be there just 1 hour. We're just going to have that.
Where on what side are you tomorrow?
How am I supporting between France, Spain, and it's tough, man. All my guys are falling. Well, I wanted Cape Verde to win. I wanted England. I wanted a new person to win. So Spain has won. Argentina has won. Messi is in Argentina, and boy, they've really dug deep. They've dug deep twice to get here. But Spain are playing champagne football. The main star in Spain. Look at the irony. He's one of the highest goal scorers for Spain. No one knows him. If you ask, his name is hard to pronounce. He doesn't look like a star. No tattoos, no hair, simple guy, you know. Spain has conceded just 1 goal. Just 1 goal. So if I was a finance guy, if I looked at these 2 guys on paper, I'll put money on Spain because the numbers tell me that this company has no debt, is able to produce a high return on equity. It's got valued managers that stay in the company, are homebred. They take their managers from management trainee. They work in the same company. They understand the system of playing that company, and they deliver results. They have a few stars. They have a young manager that they call Yamal. He's a young star. He's an IT boy. He's doing some stuff. But the bulk of the stars are all from their management training school. They don't bring in foreign outsiders. They train and they win. With Argentina, you have a company where you have a lot of innovators, right? They come in, they are losing market share. One guy creates a new product, the company survives. They go down, one guy does a new market opening here, growth comes from that. So it's difficult to see the long-term strategy. What you know is that they've got lots of individual managers that have brought lots of experience back to that team and are able to deliver. So do you go with fundamentals, return, long, consistent capital return, or do you go with this is a very, very good CEO? On a good day, he can make water from rocks. That's just really what it is. If I was a betting man, man, I don't get in trouble. Last time I talked about Messi, they nearly killed me on Twitter. So I'll just pass. We'll focus more on the cost speed. Korean market is going down. What should you do? That's what we're going to talk about tomorrow. But yeah, you guys hang out tomorrow. 1 hour, we'll be there, and then we'll let you guys go watch the World Cup. All right.
Pleasure. Thank you very much, Kalu.
Thank you, guys. Bye. Thanks for coming. I'll see you guys tomorrow. You guys have a fantastic day. Yeah, thanks for hanging out, guys. Your questions are all taken, and I'll see if I can pass them on to them. All right, thank you. Have a good one.